Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, you're feeling okay and ready for the weekend. We are almost there. So, happy Friday, everyone. And welcome to today's Speakers for Schools Industry Spotlight Talk. Hopefully, you're feeling ready to go. It's going to be a really good one today. We're going to be hearing from one of our industry insiders, which is somebody who currently works in an industry and is living out the experiences that come along with building a career. So we're very excited to explore the world of law today and what it's like to start off in a law career. It should be a really, really good session. We have just under, 45 minutes to an hour for this session, and it's going to include a presentation with our speaker before we later move on to a student Q&A. Questions for our speaker can be submitted now and throughout the rest of the session. So we do encourage you to submit as many questions as you like in response to anything that's said today. You might have to scroll down a little bit depending on the device that you're watching to be able to see the Q&A box, but it's just underneath the stream. Now, if you find yourself to have any sort of technical difficulties, please do let us know via that Q&A box, and one of our moderators will be on hand to help where we can. Now, we're very excited to move on to the main event. So, everybody, please welcome Hilda, who is a human rights and civil liberties solicitor. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Charlie. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I hope we're all doing well. The weather's nice today, so yeah.
Yeah, somehow. I'll hand straight over to you then for your presentation. Yeah, here you go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great. Good morning again, everyone. So, as Charlie did introduce me, my name's Hilda. My surname is Kwoffie, Hilda Kwoffie. I am a human rights and civil liberties solicitor. I'm just going to be speaking to you this morning about exploring the law industry. So I have prepared a nice deck for us today. I'm going to run through, like Charlie said, if you have any questions, you can just put them in the Q&A box and I can address them towards the end. But I'm hoping that I addressed most of the questions that you have now during the presentation. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction so you get to know me. I feel like sometimes when people hear that someone's a lawyer, they feel so like, oh, they're a lawyer. But then, I do have a background. I started from somewhere to get to where I am today. So I'm going to walk you through that journey and kind of give you some insight as well into how, if anyone is here interested in law, what it will take for you to get where I am today as well. So, my name's Hilda again. I was actually born and raised in Ghana in West Africa. I lived there for 19 years of my life. And when I was 19, I moved to England. The reason I actually moved to England was to come and study at university for my LLB. So, LLB is your undergraduate degree. That's what you do when you're done with college and you want to study law. The course you do is called an LLB law degree. So, that's what I did when I came to the UK in 2016. Since then, I've managed to qualify as a solicitor of the Senior Courts of England and Wales, and I specialize in human rights and civil liberties. So what that means is, for anyone who doesn't know what a human rights lawyer or solicitor does, is I basically work with people who feel they've been treated unfairly or have had their basic rights like freedom of speech or privacy taken away. So my job is to protect the rights of people and make sure that they're being treated fairly and make sure that their human rights are not being infringed on. That's basically my job as a human rights solicitor. And just if I would just summarize my entire life, my entire journey, I would say that I have always been driven by a passion for law, improving how it works. I know we have laws in place at the moment, but there's still reforms that need to be put in place. There's things that need to be improved. There's always room for improvement. And just, discovering creative and new ways to help clients. So yeah, that's just a quick introduction. So next, I'm just going to give you an overview of what the presentation is going to look like. So I'm going to talk you through my actual journey in law. I know I touched on it briefly, but I'm going to go into detail. Then I will give you some practical tips for aspiring law students if you're hoping to maybe do your A levels in law, or you want to study law in university, you want to be a lawyer, but you're not sure how to get there. I will give you some practical tips on what you need to be doing now and what you need to be doing and focusing on in the future. I'll also speak about the different roles in the legal industry, because I know sometimes we only think that if you study law, you can only be a lawyer. But when you study law, there's different things you can do, as we will see later. I'll also speak about the realities, because I was telling one of my mentees yesterday that so many of us, we watch these law shows and we think that's how the real world is. But unfortunately, it's not like that. So I will also touch on some of the challenges that you will face. I think it's just good to sometimes, know what happens behind the curtain so you can prepare yourself, embrace yourself, because some of us didn't really have that insight. And so we came into the profession and we had like a shock. But once you know what to expect, it will help you as you go along. There's also quite some rewards from being having a legal career, so we'll get into that as well, and then we will have our Q&A session. Okay, so my journey in law. So I will first talk about what led me to study law. It was basically an early interest in justice. So when I was a very young age, there was something that happened in my family, and basically I was just seeing the situation go on, and I didn't. In Ghana, basically, I mean, it happens here as well. If you're trying to retain a lawyer, you're trying to get a lawyer, you need to pay all this money to get a lawyer. Yeah. So I was just thinking about how expensive it was for my family to have to get a lawyer for this case that we were dealing with, and just seeing the emotional toll and the strain that it put my family under. I just developed such an interest for justice. I was just like, wow, I wish I was the lawyer. I wish I could be doing this for my family for free. I wish I could support, and so that's what kind of gave me that interest in law. So I was like, you know what, I think I want to be a lawyer. I'm sure many people have had similar stories. For some of you, it may be that your parents are already lawyers and you're like, well, yeah, this is what I want to do. For some other people, it may be that you watched a show and you just felt like, well, I see myself doing this as well. Others, it may be a book you read, or you've just, sometimes you just have that innate feeling that this is what's meant for me. That may be your cue as well, that law is what you want to do. So for me personally, it was just an early interest in justice. So what that meant was, when I finished my A levels, I started applying to universities, and yeah, I started applying to universities, and basically I applied to study law. So I relocated from Ghana, came to the UK in 2016, and I studied, sorry, there's an error in my slides. I don't know why I put that there, but I studied my LLB law at the University of Hull. So not the University of Law. University of Law was much later, which I'll get into. But I did that at the University of Hull, and that was for 4 years. I know most LLB degrees are meant to be for 3 years, but mine was 4 years because I did a study abroad, a year abroad in France as well. But yeah, so I mean, I knew the first step to becoming a lawyer was I need a law degree. So that was what I did, which is why after I went to college, I did my A levels, I applied to study law. So that was the very first thing I did. And then in 2018 to 2019, I decided to study abroad. And that's mainly because I kind of always knew I wanted to be a human rights lawyer, and I wanted to learn more about the human rights system in other countries. So I was thinking, what better opportunity than to take a year abroad as part of my degree, and then go and study and, learn about another country's system. So that's what I did from 2018 to 2019 at the Université Grenoble-Alpes, that's in France. So I did that. I did a diploma in legal studies. I came back in 2019, September of 2019, and then I finished up my law degree. So yeah, fortunately, I was very fortunate enough to graduate with the first class from the University of Hull. So that was really exciting for me and my family. I think I should point out as well that in my family, I am the first lawyer. So you can imagine, yeah, the excitement when that happened in my family. So once I finished my law degree in 2020, we all know what happened in 2020. COVID hit really badly. So I finished in June of 2020. I always knew I wanted to further my studies, but when COVID hit, I decided to take a bit of a break. And I decided to continue in 2021. So the next step for me as a lawyer then, once I was done with my LLB, which is my undergraduate degree in law, was that I actually had to go to law school. So the difference between the LLB and then the LPC, which I'm about to get into, or law school, is that with the LLB is more theory. So you will go for lectures, they will be teaching you about the history of contract law, case law. It's just very theoretical. They're teaching you, lecturing to you. But the difference between when you're done with that and you know that you want to practice in law school itself, it's more about teaching you how to become a lawyer. They're equipping you with the skills to be a lawyer, because when you meet your clients, you're not going to be going to them with a history of contract law. Clients come to you about a breach of contract. You're going to have to, show and exhibit certain skills. You're not going to have to be telling them, oh, well, this the first contract was founded in whatever. So that's the difference. So once I was done with that, I went to law school and I did my LPC, which is a practical legal practice course. So it trains you to be a lawyer. You do very practical work, workshops and things like that. So I did that for 1 year at the University of Law. So I did my LPC, that's the legal practice course. I also wanted to do a master's as well. So I did the LPC with a master's at the same time. And the master's was in law, business and management. I would like to point out, I'm sure I'm going to get questions about this, but when I was in university, one thing that I didn't know about was the difference between a master's degree and law school, like during the practice course. So when I was about to finish my LLB, I remember I was having a conversation in the cafeteria with one of my friends, and I was telling her that, you know what, when I'm done with my LLB, I just want to do a master's. And she was like, oh, why do you want to do a master's? Do you want to teach in law? Like, what is the purpose? I was like, no, 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 I want to be a lawyer, but I want to do my master's. She was like, well, a master's is kind of like a continuation of the LLB that you did, is also very theory based. If you want to be a lawyer, you need to go through the practice courses, which was the LPC. And if you're looking to join the bar, there's multiple bar practice courses as well, bar training courses. And now I believe the LPC has been scrapped. So there's something called an SQE now. For some of you who've been looking into applying to universities, I'm sure you've probably heard of the SQE, which is a solicitor's qualifying examination. So that has now taken the place of the LPC. So one thing that I would also like to say is my first steps in the legal world included work shadowing, mini pupillages, work experience opportunities, and internships. So even though I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, I wasn't too sure what area of law I wanted to do. I mean, I knew I liked human rights. I knew that I wanted to protect the rights of people. But at the same time, I really liked family law because it just seemed nice to me. At the same time as well, I really liked immigration law. And so there were so many things I liked at the same time. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to specialize in? So I started, even as a student, I didn't wait till I was done with university. I didn't wait until I think my very first work shadowing I was still in college. I was just about to write my A levels, because I just wanted to be sure that law really was what I wanted to do. So that's one thing I will encourage. I mean, we'll come to that much later, but yeah, I will encourage that. But yeah, what I would say is, so when I was a student, I really did try and put myself out there, try and see what was out there, try and actually see that this is really what I want to do, because you don't want to commit to something and then you go into the thing and then you realize, oh, no, this is not what I thought it was at all. I've had so many friends I went to university with. We all started a law degree at the same time, and then some of them just dropped out because they're like, law's not for me. But I feel like if they had done work shadowing, mini pupilages, and they had gotten some internship experience, it doesn't need to be paid. You just go to a law firm or a chamber, just watch how things go, and then you can kind of get a conviction that, you know what, I can actually do this. But if you don't know what it really is like and you're just basing everything on what you see on TV, it's not the best decision, I would say. So that's one thing I did that I think really helped me. And sometimes I wish I actually started earlier. So for those who are much younger, I mean, I think it would be good to start reading more on it. If you can just get some work experience, it can be one day, literally. And that will help you to make a very informed decision. Next slide. Okay, so once I was done with my LPC in 2021, I finished in October of 2021. And then in November of 2021, I got my first paying job as a paralegal. For those who don't know what a paralegal is, I will come to it when we're talking about the different roles in the legal industry. But I got my first role as a paralegal. That lasted for about 3 months. It was in Wolverhampton. Um, I was living in Reading at the time, but then I was willing to make the journey, because once you have a passion for something, you're just willing to do anything to make it work. So I was willing to move anywhere in the country just to get that job. So that was my first role. And then the second role, I got another paralegal role at a firm in London called GT Stewart Solicitors and Advocates. So I joined them in February of 2022. And then 3 months into me being there, they started advertising something called a training contract. So it's so interesting, but like there's so many layers to becoming a lawyer. So I'm going to walk you through it again so you follow me. The very first one is you go to university and you study a law degree. Then, when you're done with university, you do a law practice course, or you do the solicitor's qualifying course or a bar practice course. You need to do some form of training course that will prepare you to becoming a lawyer. And once you're done with that, you're not done. You need to actually going to a law firm or a chambers or whatever it is and start working there, and you will be working under supervision. I mean, it does make sense because you've been in school this whole time. They can't really just throw you into the deep and start handing you clients. So what happens in, for instance, when you get a training contract and you become a trainee solicitor, is you be working in a law firm and you be working under supervision. So you be learning the ropes of what it actually is being a lawyer, and then under supervision. So you go to your supervisor at all times, this, that they're teaching you the steps. So once I finished my paralegal role, I've managed to get a training contract and I became a trainee solicitor at GT Stewart Solicitors. And once I was done with my training contract, that lasted for 18 months. Yeah, that was 18 months. I became a solicitor. I qualified as a solicitor. So yeah, I qualified as a solicitor this year. I'm still having a pinch me moment sometimes. When you've worked towards something for so long and it finally happens, I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually a solicitor. But it's really exciting and it's really fulfilling. It was a bit of a journey. I mean, I first started the journey in 2016 and we are in 2024. So that's about 8 years. So it is a bit of a journey. That's why I'm saying that you need to make sure that you have that inner conviction. That's what will keep you going those 8 years. Because if you just want to be a lawyer because it sounds fancy, so I feel like along the way you just get tired and be like, yeah, this is not for me. Okay, so moving on to our next slide. So this is probably my favorite slide. So aspiring law students, I'm going to give you some practical tips. If you are not sure at the moment, you feel like you want to study law, but you're not too sure, slide point one, um, you should would help you to kind of ascertain whether this is something that you can do. There are key skills that lawyers are meant to possess, and I feel like if you currently find yourself exhibiting these skills, then it may mean that law is something you can work in. The very first one is critical thinking skills. The thing about law is it's not one size fits all. So you may have a client today and you may have a client tomorrow. Even though the law is the same, the way you approach client A is not the same way you approach client B, because they have completely different circumstances. The way you apply the law will not be the same for client A as it will be for client B. And so you need to have the ability to critically think. You need to be able to know how to apply the law. You need to know how to tailor the law to fit the person that you're representing. So currently, if you find that in college or in school, you do really well critically thinking and analyzing things, maybe they give you some literature work or whatever it is, and you find that you're very good at like pulling out information from case studies and things like that, law may be something that you can get into. The other thing is research skills. How good are you at finding information from books, from encyclopedias, from the internet, from newspapers? You know, how good are you at sifting information? If we were giving you a topic today to go and research on, would you struggle to do it? You know, if it's something that comes to you naturally, then that's something that, you know, law may be really good for you. That's something that you could consider. The other thing, communication. But one thing I would say about communication is it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. If I tell you 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if you told me to come and speak to people, I would literally go hide under a table because I didn't have that confidence, but it came with time. It came with practice. And so with communication, if you're good at drafting, you're good at writing, because you will draft a lot of letters as a lawyer. You will draft a lot of letters as a lawyer. So you need to have really good written skills. The other thing as well is oral skills. You need to know how to speak to people. But like I said, it comes with practice and it comes with time. So even if you find that you really want to learn, then that's more than enough. Because the more you continue to talk to people, you realize that you're building on that confidence and you're building on that. So that's another skill that you would need. In the legal industry, emotional resilience. You will be dealing with people, you will be dealing with people's lives. This specifically is tailored to if you're going to be like a family lawyer or you're going to be a mediator. I mean, like I said, the different roles in the legal industry, you don't necessarily need to be a lawyer, but then you still need this level of emotional resilience because you're still dealing with other people, you're still dealing with other matters, you're still dealing with other cases. And sometimes it's so difficult having to detach yourself from your case or from your client, because maybe you have a client come to you and you're going through a really bad divorce and you can see how it's taking a toll on them, and you're just like, man, you know. But then you need that emotional resilience to be able to set boundaries that, you know what, I'm the lawyer, I'm not their friend. I'm not going to, you know, cross that boundary. You need to also be able to put your emotions to the side and give it to them as it comes, give it to them straight up. Sometimes you find that some people, they promise more than they can give. I mean, as lawyers, there's only so much that we can do for a client, which is our very best to make sure that their interests are met. But sometimes people go overboard and start to make promises that they know they can't fulfill. So you need that emotional resilience to be able to control yourself and hold yourself. Ability to handle pressure. So what it looks like working in law is there's so many things coming at you at the same time. You need to know how to take on the pressure. If you're someone who crumbles under pressure, and you need a very relaxing environment to kind of work and to thrive in, then law may be too stressful for you, because there have been incidents where people have pushed themselves and wanted to pursue a career in law, but then they naturally cannot really handle pressure, and then it's caused them to have breakdowns and burnouts and things like that. So you know yourself as a person. Do you think these are skills that you currently possess? Do you think these are skills that you can work on? And if these are things that you currently possess, then law may be for you. If these are things that I can actually work on them, then law may be for you. But if these are things that you're like, it's just not for me, then it's just not for you. But then again, there's other things that you can do even while you study law. You don't necessarily need to be a lawyer. We'll get into that shortly. So the second thing is choose a law specialization based on your passion. So many people lately are driven by things like money. I mean, money's great. We all love money. But like, the thing about law is, if you don't have an interest in the area you're working in, you will really struggle because it won't come to you naturally. And so make sure that whatever area you want to specialize in or you want to study more about, you just have a passion for it. I had a passion for human rights, making sure that people are treated fairly, and that's why I ended up as a human rights lawyer. You may have a passion for businesses, supporting businesses and things like that, corporate law, or what's the other one? Corporate law or competition law or commercial law is what would work for you. So you know yourself, again, do a personal assessment, and then you can choose your law specialization based on your passion. The very third point, which I spoke on briefly before, don't wait to graduate from law school to apply for internships and work experience opportunities, because this will help you to, one, give you that conviction that law is for you. Two, it will help you to kind of narrow down on what area of law you want to specialize in. And three, it will give you some skills and it will set you above your mates. It will give you one step ahead, because you kind of already know what it's like working in the industry. You already know what it's like, what it truly is like being a lawyer, what it's truly like working in the law field. So these are my three top tips for anyone who's aspiring to work in the legal industry. Okay, so there are different roles in the legal industry. You don't necessarily need to be a lawyer. I know whenever we say someone studied law, we expect them to automatically become a lawyer when they're done. I have so many friends I went to law school with who are not lawyers at the moment. Some of them are visiting lecturers who are teaching law, and some of them are paralegals, some of them are, mediators. So there's so much that you can do if you have a passion for law, but maybe you just don't necessarily want to do the whole lawyer thing. So number one, this is just a few ones I've put together. There's more out there, so you can go and read on it, but these are just a few I wanted to touch on today, because there's so many. If I say I'm talking about all of them, we're gonna end at like 2 o'clock. Okay, so the very first one, arbitrator. What they do is they help to resolve legal disputes. So to be an arbitrator, you also need a law background, but then you're not necessarily a lawyer, but your role is, whenever there's a legal dispute between two people, two organizations, whatever it is, you come in and then you resolve it. There may be some of you here who you naturally find that you love to kind of, when two of your friends, two of your girls, two of your guys are not talking to each other, you find that you are good at resolving whatever's going on. You may be on your path to being an arbitrator. That's something that you can consider. So that's one way. Another one is called a mediator. So they manage conflict and they help opposing parties resolve legal disagreements. It's quite similar to an arbitrator, but quite different. So what the mediator does is, for instance, in a divorce setting, a family mediator, two people, the husband and the wife will come together, and then the mediator tries as much as possible for them to come to an agreement that will not cause them to go to court. So the purpose of the mediator is to resolve the disagreement so that it doesn't go to court. So that's what a mediator does. Again, if you're good at managing conflict, that may be something that you could look into. Lecturer in law. If you like teaching, if maybe you see your college teachers, you see your school teachers, and you're like, I see myself doing this. I like students. I want to help students. But I also want a background in law. You can teach in law. You can become a lecturer in law. Like I said, I know people my age, and I'm quite young, I think. I know people my age who are visiting lecturers at university. So you don't need to be in your 40s or in your 50s to become a visiting lecturer, to become a lecturer. You can be in your 20s and you can become a lecturer. You just need to make sure that you get your solid background in law and you're good. Legal secretary. What this looks like is providing admin support to lawyers and paralegals and barristers. So what you would do is, if you're really good with admin, interestingly, I'm amazing at admin. I was literally telling our admin support the other day that if I wasn't a lawyer, I think I would be working in admin. If you like to, you're very organized, you know how to put emails together, you know how to make sure your calendar's always in check, you're good with, you're very put together. You have a very excellent spirit. Like you're good and very organized. You can consider being a legal secretary. And sometimes as well, when you start off as one thing, you don't need to end there. So some people start off as legal secretaries just so they can get some insight into what it is being a lawyer. Because as a legal secretary, you will be working with lawyers, and that will kind of help you to see what a lawyer's work really is about. By the time you're a legal secretary for like 2 years and you're like, you know what, I still want to be a lawyer, it's easier for you to become a very good lawyer because you've observed firsthand what it is to be a lawyer. So these roles, don't think that once you start off as an arbitrator you need to end there. No, you can start off as a legal secretary and then work your way up to becoming a solicitor, or you can start off as a legal secretary, work your way up to being a barrister and being a judge. So it's just, it keeps flowing. You don't need to be in one position for your whole life. A solicitor. So I know we throw around the word lawyer, 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 but in the UK, in England and Wales, to be a lawyer, it's divided into two categories, actually three, but I'll talk more about two. So there's something called a solicitor. I'm sure some of you have heard solicitor, and I'm sure some of you have heard barrister. These two people are lawyers, but there's a division. So if you go to school, you realize that you'll be working towards becoming either a solicitor or a barrister. What a solicitor does is, I'll just give you an example. If you have a legal matter, you have a case that you need legal representation in, you would go to a law firm. You would speak to somebody and they would try to help you. That person is a solicitor. That person you would go to in the law firm is usually a solicitor. What solicitors do is they try to provide legal assistance while keeping it out of court as much as they can. Because there's so much pressure on our courts today, so many cases going on, fewer judges, fewer courts. So the goal is to limit the cases that go to court. So that's what a solicitor does. You come and see me as a solicitor. I would try and support you in the best way I can without it going to court. But sometimes cases are so complicated. It gets to a point where, you know what, this still has to go to court. When it has to go to court, that person who wears the wig and has that collar and then wears the robe, that's a barrister. So they would go before the judge. They are trained for advocacy. So if you do the bar training course I was talking about, what they're teaching you is advocacy. all your courses, all your exams are how do you go before a judge? How do you present a case? How do you do this? How do you do that? So barristers are trained to go before judges and put the client's case before the judge and make sure that the client gets whatever outcome they're looking for. So I hope that clarifies it. If it doesn't, just leave a question and I will be able to answer. There's another thing called the chartered legal executive. So they are much similar to a solicitor. So they study to the same level as a solicitor, but then they specialize in one particular area of law. So I was talking about how I did my training contract. So I did my training contract in multiple areas of law. But with a chartered legal executive, once they're done with law school, they would focus on one area of law to gain specialization in. So maybe it's just environmental law and that's all they would work in. That's a chartered legal executive. Paralegal. So these are usually employees. They offer legal assistance to solicitors in a firm. So they're not qualified, maybe because they've been to law school, but they haven't done the training contract yet. So whilst they're still waiting for that to fall in place for them, you can work as a paralegal. And then we have a judge. We all know what a judge does. They preside over court hearings. So it's different things you can do. It doesn't have to be just, I'm going to law school, I have to be a lawyer. That's not true. That's a myth. There's so much that you can do after you go to law school. And like I said, this is just a few. You can go and read more about it. And I'm sure there's something that will, be tailored to you, your skills, and what you enjoy. Challenges and rewards of a legal career. The very first challenge, long hours. Um, Being a lawyer, being an arbitrator, being a mediator, being a lecturer in law, it usually involves long working hours. So that's one thing to bear in mind. If you're okay with that, then perfect. But if that's something to even be worked on, I mean, I'll get into it, but it's doable as well. When I used to hear that there were long working hours in law, it kind of deterred me a little bit. But then now that I do it, because I enjoy what I do so much, I sometimes don't realize that time's gone. I remember literally yesterday I was on the phone with my partner and he so work is from 9 to 5:30 and it was about 5 o'clock and he was like, oh, you have 30 more minutes to get off work. I was like, oh, really? I didn't realize. And it was 5:30 and he called me because I had another meeting. He was like, are you done working? It's time for your meeting. And I was like, oh no, I just want to finish this really quickly. So once you have that passion, you realize that it won't really be a challenge as much. So that's why I keep saying that make sure you have that innate passion. Don't just do it because all your friends are doing it. Don't just do it because it's what's in vogue. Everyone's a lawyer now, so I want to be a lawyer now. Do it because you have that passion for it. The next one is emotional toll. I touched on emotional resilience, making sure that you're built to know how to set boundaries because sometimes it can be emotionally draining. I deal with human rights, so you can imagine how sad some of the cases I deal with are. And I'm just like, oh my God, like this is so sad. I wish I could do something more. So there's that emotional toll as well that comes in. But you need to know how to, set boundaries and be like, you know what, it is what it is. I'll do my very best to help them. Balancing work life and self-care is so important. It's so, so, so important because it's very easy when you're working in law to lose yourself. There's always, when I tell you there's always something to be done, there is always something to be done. There's never a time where you're 100% done with all your cases or things like that. So you need to know how to be like, this is my work time, this is my me time, and you need to have things that help you. So if for instance I'll bring this down more to being in law school. When you're studying for your courses, your classes, and things like that, you need to make time for you as well. When you're in college, when you're a student, when you're in university, make sure that you have time. If it's just like a comfort show, take time out from doing your coursework. Set an alarm, do your coursework for 3 hours, Take an hour off to watch your comfort show, get back to your coursework. Don't sit in a dark room for 9 hours doing coursework and then you kind of let yourself go. Because once your self-care, you don't think about yourself and your mental health, it's even going to impact the level of your work and your productivity, because if you're not in the right mental state to work or to study, you're not going to be able to do anything. You realize that you will literally be looking at that screen for 9 hours and you wouldn't have even typed anything sensible. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Be intentional. That's the word. Be intentional about taking care of yourself. So you need to make sure that you have a good work life or school life and self-care balance. The rewards. The very first reward I would say is you're making a difference. Lawyers make a difference. People who work in law are making a difference. So it's a very important industry. And so that's one reward, that you know that, okay, I'm setting this goal for myself. I want to do this by the next 5 years, by the next 8 years, by the next 10 years. By the time you get to that finish line, you're like, wow, okay, I'm here now and I can make that difference. You get that sense of fulfillment as well, that, you know what, I'm helping people, I'm representing organization, I'm making sure that society, this, everything's going on right in society. And the other one, I mean, like I said, we all do like money. Sorry, bear with me. We all do like money. And so okay, another thing that could be a reward is the competitive salaries in the area of law. I know people who are earning so much money, and so if that's one of your motivations as well, because there's so much you want to do, that's also something that, that after I go through all this education, at least I know I'm gonna be earning some good money. All right, then. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, my deck. I hope I wasn't talking too much at you and I was actually making sense and conveying what it really is like to work in the law industry. Again, these are things when I was a student, I wish someone had told me, because I was just basing everything off of what I saw on shows, and it's not always the reality. So I hope it's kind of giving you some insight into what to expect if you want to be an aspiring law student or if you want to work in law in the future. Thank you. So I will just take the questions now.
Hello, thank you for that presentation. Yeah, really insightful, and it's nice for you to go over each step. So I have a question here, which I think is quite a nice one to start off with, and it's really simple. It's just, what might your day-to-day look like?
Okay, so like I did say, I work from 9 to 5:30. My area of law. So personally, as a human rights lawyer, what I do is wake up, start work. First thing I do is check my emails, because sometimes I may have missed some emails from the day before, or I may have gotten some very important emails that morning. I then go through my caseload. So sometimes I have appointments and meetings booked, so I will start preparing for them in advance. If I have a meeting with a client, I need to make sure that I go over their case and things like that. If I don't have any meetings booked, usually what I do is I would like I said, there's always work to be done in law. So I would go through my work list and then start working through in order of priority. So deadlines. Sometimes you'd have a deadline for tomorrow, you have a deadline for next week. So obviously I'll start working on tomorrow's deadline before next week's. So yeah, I'll start doing that. Another thing about human rights law, so I specifically currently work in mental health law. So what that looks like is my clients are detained in hospital. So they usually cannot come to me, I go to them. So I do quite a number of trips to hospitals around the country. So sometimes I get visits booked in, I go see them. What we work towards things like tribunal hearings, we go through the cases together, we read reports together. So that's usually what my day is. I do answer quite a number of phone calls as well. You have clients calling you all the time because they just kind of want to sometimes know what's happening with my case, even though you spoke to them 20 minutes ago. So yeah, it's just a lot of, that's why I was saying that your communication needs to be top, 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 because you're always dealing with a client, either in person, via email, via telephone, whatever way it is. So communication really important during your day to day as a lawyer. Yeah, that's mainly it. We do have some internal meetings as well. Law firms, you find that law firms, they need to run and run well. So they would have quite some internal meetings with your supervisors and things like that, just to make sure that everything's in check. So yeah, I hope that kind of gives some insight into what my day typically looks like.
It definitely does. And it's great to kind of hear what that might be like for those people who are thinking about this as a career.
Yeah.
Our next question, then, and I think this one's quite nice because you talk a lot about, trying to get some practical experience and things like that.
Yes.
And this question is, how important is mentorship? Did you have a mentor? And did that play any sort of role within your kind of careers you were learning?
I would say mentorship is one of the most important things you need to obtain during your legal journey. So when I was in law school, I sought out quite a number of mentors, but unfortunately, I wasn't too lucky because I felt like all the people I got connected with are always so busy with their own professional lives. So the kind of um insight they were giving me, sometimes like I could have just read this online. Honestly, it wasn't very tailored, it wasn't proper guidance or support. So yeah, I would say seek out mentorship. There's people out there who are really dedicated to trying to mentor people like yourselves who are up and coming. So do your research on it, find mentors who are, dedicated to you and your journey, and you will realize that it will make such a difference. I have had the privilege to mentor quite a number of people, and it's amazing to see the progression they've made. And sometimes I'm like, wow, I wish I had me as a mentor when I was growing up. So please, 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 please do seek mentorship, and don't be deterred if the first mentor you get is not as dedicated to you as you would like them to be. Still go out there and still seek more mentors. What I would say about mentorship as well is that's why it's kind of important to know, have a fair idea of the area of law you want to qualify in. Because if you want to be a commercial lawyer and you're seeking mentorship from a family lawyer, there's only so much that they can give you. So try, if you already have a fair idea of what you want to do and you go to the lawyer that specializes in the area of law you want to specialize in, you realize that it will be very helpful. It will make all the difference. So do your research. LinkedIn is a very amazing way to find people. Google as well. Just, type in Google. I feel like we underestimate the power of Google. Literally, go in Google and type family lawyer in, I don't know, in Birmingham or something. Family lawyers in Birmingham. You see a list of people come up. You just do your research on them, and you can just reach out to them. Just send them a nice email. Hi, my name is this. I'm currently studying here. I have such a interest in law. Are you Could you potentially mentor me if you have the time? Something, even if you just have a one-to-one meeting for them, like a one-off one-to-one meeting, it can make all the difference. So do put yourself out there and do seek for mentorship. Yeah.
Wonderful. We've got lots of questions coming in, so please do
Okay.
keep those coming. The next question then comes from the Royal Wonton Bassett Academy. I hope I've pronounced that right. And they have asked, what traits do employers look for during the interview or hiring process?
Oh, okay. So I mean, this one sometimes is more dependent on what you're applying for. So if they could specify, but I mean, generally, what employers look for is they want someone who is dedicated to the profession. So if you know how I talk about how I've always had an early interest in justice, they know that this is someone who actually wants to work in law. So if you've you show a dedication to law, maybe through your background or maybe through what you've studied, through the work experience you've had, that can go a long way. But if you've usually not done anything at all in law and you're seeking work experience, sometimes they may be a bit hesitant because they think, oh, she's just playing the field or he's just playing the field. But yeah, showing that level of dedication is really important. I think another thing as well is it doesn't even necessarily need to be in law, because one thing about law is the skills are very transferable. So I was telling my mentee this yesterday that if you work in Tesco's and you usually assist with sales and things like that, you meet people on a day-to-day basis, you help people. That's the people skills that you kind of demonstrate at Tesco's are the same skills you can transfer to when you're becoming a lawyer and you're dealing with people. So you just need to make sure that you have these skills, people skills, communication skills, and just make sure that you're putting yourself forward. And one thing about employers, they do love a good story. They do love a good story. And so if you're sharing with them why, I would say that you always need to make sure you're putting yourself above other people. And so make sure that you have a good story as to why you want to be a lawyer. And then usually that works. That works, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of you don't always have to go specifically into law because they're transferable, but you're in some way showing the
Yep,
traits, the
yep,
things that they might be looking for, and you have the evidence to back that up.
yes.
Um, a next question then, which is quite interesting, it's a personal question that's come in for you, and it's would you be doing both the prosecuting and doing the defence, or would you do both? I think it's would you do one or the other or both?
Personally, okay, so I'm a solicitor, so that would be a question for someone who did the bar course. But I will still answer that. I think, oh, that's such a good question. Because when I think about it on both sides, the defense, you're obviously representing your client, and sometimes your client may be guilty. But with the prosecution, you are representing the state. And so if someone has maybe committed a traffic offense, you're the one who's, you know, trying them, bringing them before the court, making sure that they get whatever sentence is meant to be given to them. So I think personally, I would do prosecution. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you
interesting.
should. Yeah.
Okay. Somebody has asked, and I think this is probably came in when you were talking about sort of the amount of time and dedication that,
Yes.
going into the law industry requires. Someone's asked, when do you have spare time, slash, what are the holidays like? Do you have a lot of stress in the job?
Ooh. Okay, so when do I have spare time? You need to be intentional about carving out spare time for yourself. Like I did say, the work always carries on. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself working late hours, on things that you don't need to be working late hours on, because it's due in 2 weeks, it's due in a week. If it's due tomorrow, then I understand why you'd be working late hours. So you need to be very intentional. I hosted a networking event last month, and one of my mentors was saying that um, it's so intentional to set physical boundaries. So in your house, for instance, in her house, sorry, she has a room where she works, and she doesn't bring work into her bedroom. And so she knows that once she's done with work, once 5:30 is up, she's closing her computer. When she gets into her bed is her time because she's off the clock. She's off work. So I think that's one way. You need to be very intentional about it, else you find yourself being swallowed up by the work all the time. There was another question. It was like a threefold question. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, so that was the when do you have spare time sort of thing.
Hmm.
It was what do holidays look like? I'm
Yes.
guessing it's sort of do you get holidays off? And it's do you have a lot of stress?
Okay, so yeah, the holiday. So I currently have, I think, 27 holidays. Yeah, so I do take annual leave sometimes. My clients don't like it when I'm taking annual leave because they're like, "What am I gonna do?" I'm like, "You'll be fine." But you need to be very intentional about, taking your annual leave days. You're entitled to them, so make sure you take them. Go on holiday, do something nice for yourself. Sometimes you don't even need to go anywhere. You can just take annual leave to sleep in bed for the whole day because that's what you want to do, and just get some comfort food, get some popcorn, get some chocolate, get some movie, Grey's Anatomy, something, and just watch it the whole day. You know, you need to do that for yourself because it's so easy to get into a cycle of burnout where you're just so stressed. And I think the thing about burnout is people try so hard to be productive and then they end up getting burnt out, and then when they get burnt out they can't be productive. So make sure you never get to that point of being burnt out. You have the holidays, you're entitled to them, sorry, so take them. And then, sorry, my memory's so foggy today. What was the
It
last
was
one?
stress. How
Right.
stressful is it?
Um, hmm. I wouldn't say it's stressful per se, but it requires a lot. It requires a lot from you. And that's why the difference between someone who's passionate about law and someone who's not passionate about law is that word stress. Someone who's passionate about law will just see it as, I really enjoy doing this. I'm doing this. When they're, working, they're so cheery, they're smiling, they're doing it. But if you don't have a passion for it and you're just doing it because you want to be earning a certain salary, that's when it becomes stressful. It becomes like a chore to you because you don't even like what you're doing. So you need to be very sure about what you're doing. That one, you want to do law. Two, the area of law you want to go into. Because I wanted to go into real estate before I start. I mean, I was just, trying to dabble in certain things. I was like, human rights, let me see if I can get something that pays more than human rights. And I was like, no, I can do this. So make sure it's something that you innately have a passion for. I have a friend, she could never see herself doing human rights. She's just passionate about businesses and how it runs and firms and acquisitions and mergers. I'm like, okay, we're completely on the opposite sides of the spectrum. I love what I do. She loves what she does. So we don't find ourselves to be stressed, if that makes sense. So make sure what you do or what you end up doing is what you love, else you will experience that stress. So yeah.
Definitely. Our final question then that's come in is, do you get to decide what cases or clients you deal with, or are they delegated to you?
um so it depends on how your law firm is run, to be fair. With my law firm, sometimes, I mean, when a case comes in and you're comfortable, I'm like, this is something that I've dealt with before. I usually just take it on because if I don't take it on and my caseload is not, up there, when a case comes in, they can just delegate it to you and you're like, oh my God, I didn't want this case. So you need to make sure you're very proactive. That's the word. If something comes in and you think you can do it, lift your hand up. I can do it. And it actually really does leave a good impression with your supervisors and the partners of the firm, because they're like, you know what, this person doesn't wait to be assigned work. They're always putting themselves forward for work. So it does depend on how your firm is run. Some firms, they will just give you, maybe at the beginning of the week, they'll just give you, these are your cases. But if the firm is quite flexible and maybe when a case comes in, it's sent to the entire team, you'll be like, okay, hi, I can do this one, then that's fine. But yeah, with my firm, I usually just try to put myself forward as much as I can, depending on my availability and my expertise. Like human rights law, there's so many things. It covers a lot. So if I'm not really too familiar with something, I'll just take the back seat a little bit. Yeah.
Makes sense, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, we're very fast approaching the end of our time. So, as we look to end today's session, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to share with our viewers?
Yeah. So my final words to you will be, you can do anything as long as you have a will. I know it may sound cliche and you may have heard this 1,000 times, but use me as a case study. And that is why when I started, I spoke about how I was born in Ghana. I came here in 2016 and I've managed some way, somehow to qualify as a solicitor. Um, it doesn't matter what your circumstances look like now. It doesn't matter if you think you're just not prepared intellectually. It really doesn't matter. As long as innately you have a will that I want to do this thing, then you will be able to do it. The other thing I would say as well is it doesn't really matter how long it takes you, as long as you're on the path to where you want to go. So keep the destination in mind because everyone's journey is going to be different. For me, it took me 8 years. I know someone, it took her 5 years to become a solicitor. For some people, it may take them 10 years. But as long as you have that end goal in mind that I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a lecturer in law, and you work towards it, you will get there eventually. So, number one, make sure that you have that will that you want to do it. And number two, keep your eye on what your end goal is. Another thing is, I know so many people who started off wanting to be a solicitor. They're like, you know what, I don't want to dedicate 8 years of my life to be a solicitor. But the thing is, whatever you do, those 8 years are going to come. So would you want 8 years to go by with you being a solicitor, or would you want 8 years to go by and you're not a solicitor? Because the 8 years are going to go by regardless. So yeah, don't let the time frames and whatever limit you as well. Just have that will and you'll be able to do it.
Lovely. Well, thank you, Hilda, for joining us and giving your insights to what it's like to be a solicitor and work in the human rights law and to go through that process. Definitely some lovely messages and some great knowledge for us to take away. So thank you for giving us your industry insights today.
Of course. Thank you for having me as well, Charlie, and the entire team.
Thank you. All right, well, that's all we have time for today. A huge thank you to all of you. You can see right now that there is a QR code to a feedback form on screen. Please, if you've got a phone, if you've got a way, give it a quick scan. Do complete that. If you don't, please don't worry, as a feedback form will be coming to you very shortly in your emails. So please do keep an eye out for that. And if you have a couple of minutes, please do just complete that. All feedback will be shared with our speakers, and it's really important to us as a charity to hear the effect and the impact of these events. So if you have anything you'd like to say, please do let us know. All right, that's it for now. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.